Welcome to another episode of the Story Geeks. But you're probably wondering, why is OG hosting Story Geeks when Jay is with us? You're going to find out up next on this episode of the Story Geeks. Let's go. Welcome aboard, everybody, to another episode of the Story Geeks. We have a very, very special show for you today. But before we dive into the festivities, I'm going to introduce my fantastic panel. Then we're going to dive right in. George, the Italiano, has joined us once again. George, thank you so much for joining us today on this special episode of Story Geeks.
Thanks for having me, brother. And it's I have to say, it's kind of interesting seeing you do the intro for Story Geeks. So it's like kind of like out of the element here, but for a very good reason, and I can't wait to get into this specific topic. I was actually looking forward to this.
Is this the OG 55 multiverse where I'm hosting Story Geeks?
So this is the OG 55 multiverse, absolutely. Tune in next week when Jay's hosting Citrus Corner.
Yeah, exactly.
But anyway, if you'd like to find me on social media, you could do so on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me on Instagram under the Disney Italiano, and of course, you'll find me on. Well, I can't say here on my home base, but in a sense, my home base of Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner, with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info. And I had just jumbled my words because I'm used to saying here because it was an Orange Grove 55 show, but it's not. It's a story again. Whatever. I lost it.
All under the same network umbrella. It's all
we're all under the same network, same channel. So it's all good. Jay, very, very special episode. We're going to dive into your short film. We're going to dive into the process, all that good stuff. Thank you so much for joining us to talk about this. If you could let everybody at home know where they could find you on social media before we get started.
Yeah, if you want to follow me on social media over on X, it's at Jay Sherer right there. It's probably the best place to follow me. You can also follow me on Instagram with the same exact structure here at Jay Sherer. Either way, I do post I'll be posting about our short film as soon as it's complete. It's in post-production right now. And then it'll be on the How Stories Work with Jay Sherer channel. It'll also be on the Condor Blue channel, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail as we talk about this engagement that we did, this short film that we did. But yeah, thanks for having me on. Thanks for saying you wanted to talk about this, because for me, this is like a passion of my life, right? Like, this is amazing. So for me, this is really fun, and I'm glad you guys want to talk about it.
No, absolutely, Jay. We love you, man. Your family here, and you have our full 1,001% support behind you with this project. Yes. And we're looking forward to it. We're excited about it. So we can't wait to dive in and kind of pick your brain as to everything going on with this.
Awesome. Yeah.
And plus the residual check cleared. So.
Okay, so Jay, what I thought we'd do, we'll start off like basically, if you can kind of give like a little synopsis as to the short film that you directed, right? Mm-hmm. Maybe the name, kind of like without giving away like too many spoilers or what have you, but kind of like what kind of the general story is, and then we'll kind of reverse engineer and kind of get into like the inner workings.
Yeah. So the answer to that question is that it didn't start out as a short film. We actually started with a feature. And this I started the feature about a year ago. I had my long hauler COVID issues, and there was about a 2-month period where I really could not do much because I was getting dizzy. So I couldn't be on a lot of shows, like podcasts. I couldn't do my daily work because I would get really dizzy, like especially if I was moving my head around. I would just get really dizzy and discombobulated. But one of the things I could do was I could write scripts on my phone. And I do have a writing partner that I work with. His name is Nathan Sheck. He's a behind the scenes kind of person. Like, he is not like, he's been on some podcasts with me, but few and far between. He just doesn't like it, doesn't enjoy it all that much. So he and I were working on these scripts, and I had an idea for a feature script where 8 people arrive at a motel with briefcases, and it starts to you start to learn that as they arrive at this motel, that they're all there because they're being blackmailed. And and so it's sort of this like thriller. I call it a superhero thriller because as you come to find out later, all of the characters are based on superhero archetypes. So you have like someone who's like a Batman Tony Stark because he's a billionaire and he has lots of toys,
Right.
And you got another character who is like a Wolverine or like an anti-hero type of a character, and you've got so all these characters show up at this motel, and they're trying to deal with this shame and guilt that they have because something that they did in their past was not good, and now someone is blackmailing them because of that. So that's the feature script.
Now these people, this collective group, they all have to go to this motel because of the blackmail. But are they all aware of each other going into this?
No.
Or
Great question. Yeah, that's a great question. So they're not aware of each other because I oftentimes prefer smaller, more personal stories. And so I didn't want to have like superheroes that were like known throughout the world, right? Like I didn't want any of that. I wanted superheroes that were a little bit more like if you lived in the town. So first of all, it takes place in the 1970s.
Cool.
There's no like it's a 70s aesthetic. There's not like everybody's on social media, right? Like, there's these like the one billionaire guy has a cell phone. I mean, not a cell phone, a mobile phone in his car. That's it though, right? Like, nobody else has any other like crazy modern technology. And we did that on purpose because I was really wanting to write and produce. I didn't even think about directing it till later. So I really wanted to write and produce the feature, and I wrote the feature to be a low budget. So it's important, I think, if you're a writer and you want to see some of your stuff come to life, you don't go from being never having sold a script to writing Marvel films. That's not something that happens in the industry. So if you want
to go do Endgame, go for it.
Exactly.
It's like,
have fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's not how it works. So and I also knew that I know a lot of super talented people who I'll talk some of them I'll talk about today. Cool. But so I thought to myself, like, if I can write it low budget enough, then we can film it ourselves. So this has to do with the short film as well. So this is why I'm kind of going into this detail. It's all set at the motel. There's not a multi-location set, right? Like you got to think about these things for budget purposes. If you got multiple locations, you're going to be paying everybody because you're going to go into those locations, paying people for everything. You're going to have multiple permits, maybe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I had one location, and then every time that you learn a little bit more about the character's backstory and why they have shame and guilt and what they did in the past, it goes into like their headspace. And so it's this like blackout set where you only see them in the context of everything, and everything else is like blacked out. So it's kind of like almost like Stranger Things when when Eleven when she does her projecting and she goes to see what else is going on in the other places, and they have water on the ground when they do her projection, but she's still in a blackout set, so all you can see is the things in front of your face. Like you can't see anything beyond. There's no backdrop or anything. So that was the idea for the feature, and I wrote the feature, and I thought to myself, like, oh man, I really like this feature, and Nathan, my co-writer, he really liked it as well. And so I said to him, I go, you know what? Like, we should prove that we have the ability to make this feature so that down the road we can raise money for it. So that's when I wrote the short film. Now, a lot of people, when they do a proof of concept film, proof of concept just means this is proof that we can do something bigger. It's like a prototype of something, right? Like, if we can do this, then we can do a big film.
Like if you're building like a scale model of a building or something like that to kind of show
exactly
the firm, hey, this is what we can do this, Yep. Okay.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And a lot of people will do like scenes from the actual film. They'll do like 3 scenes from the film and they'll put that, or they'll do like a trailer for the feature film. And being the fact that I'm like a writer, that's like almost like a little bit too boring for me. So I was like, well, what if we write a prequel short film that actually has spoilers for the feature film. So I'm going to spoil a little bit of the feature film as we talk about this. But what if we write a prequel that has all of the same types of elements? Like we have the flashbacks that are in the blackout sets. We have a 1 location shoot at a motel. We have the superhero archetypes that we're playing with and all of that. So the short film is a prequel film that it's a long short film. It's probably going to end up being around 18 to 20 minutes, which is a long short film. Most short films are like 2 to 5 minutes or something. Some of them get up into 10 minutes, but this is a long short film. And what if we have a proof of concept short film and it's a prequel? So, 3 of the characters from the short film actually then end up appearing in the feature as well. And the short film is about the same villain is blackmailing the girlfriend of the Superman archetype. When I say archetype, like, think of like all of the things that Superman deals with as a character, but it's not Superman, right? So it's like a different character. He doesn't fly or anything, right? And
much more like grounded character. No pun intended,
exactly.
but, you know.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And so the character who's being blackmailed is an investigative journalist, something like who you'd see in the comics with Lois Lane. I mean, there's a bunch of investigative journalists in comics, but so she's the one being blackmailed, right, in the short film, and it's all about her dealing with that situation. So that's the basic concept for the short film is. And it's fun because it's got a lot of thriller elements that we'll get into, and we have some photos I can show you that get to the thriller elements, but also it is pretty weighty because there's a lot of shame and guilt complex that we're dealing with here. So like all of the characters have a lot of like emotion that they're bringing into the film, which I think is makes it compelling as like a piece of art, but also compelling as like a fun thing to go and see. So you get kind of both.
So it's a very character driven story. A lot of character development. Interesting.
In fact, there's very few. The amount of VFX is like astronomically small. Like there's a few VFX that we're gonna have in it. But when I say VFX, what I'm talking about is like putting something on a TV screen. I'm not talking about like there's like a big giant robot or something. Like, there's none of that stuff, right? It's nothing like you'd see from a Marvel film. Most of all the effects and all the things that we did were in camera. So pretty cool.
And that's brilliant in my opinion, Jay, because when you have a small film or a short film, right? Obviously the budget for something like this would be a lot smaller than like what we talked about, like an MCU film or something like that.
Way smaller, yeah.
Yeah, way smaller. So it's like when you do something like on a smaller scale, I think when you have that character focus, it makes sense, obviously, financially, but it also makes sense creatively, right? Because it's like it works. Now, George, do you have any questions for Jay before we're going to move on to we're going to really dive into the inner workings? But any questions in regards to the storyline or what's going on with the plot?
Yeah. So when you sent us over the photos that I was kind of going through, the one photo that kind of caught my attention was the motel, and you actually answered to the notion of that's where a lot of that's where it was filmed through the whole entire thing. Now you also said that all 8 characters went to this motel, so was it I assume it was to the notion that the blackmailer told all 8 of them to go to this specific location?
Yeah, so in the feature film, that's where there's all the 8 characters, right? In the short film, it's just one character that's going to the motel. So yes, in the feature film, they all get invitations, and the invitations come with a briefcase, and the briefcase is full of their deepest, darkest secrets that they don't want revealed. And the invitation basically says, you should come to this motel on this day, because if you don't, we're going to reveal everything to the world, right? And so that's the setup for the feature. And then the short film is very similar. It's just that it's one character. So it's you, Lee Larson, need to show up at this motel, or else your secrets are going to be revealed to the entire world.
Wow, that's wild.
Well, it's a good thing that he didn't ask me, because if it was me, they wouldn't need a briefcase; they'd need a duffel.
Duffel bag. All of George's inner secrets and skeletons in his closet. That's funny. Now, this is a picture of said motel. This is pretty cool, Jay. I like this. Now, did you have to alter the motel at all? Like the neon and all that, was that already part of the equation when you got there, or did you add that on for effect?
Yeah, great question. So So the way that we were able to go after a location is that, first of all, you just basically do location scouting. Now, location scouting is a little bit easier in the modern day than it was back in the day, because there's a bunch of websites that have like locations where you can go film and you can go look through all the photos and stuff. And we had narrowed it down to essentially 2 locations. One that was a little bit less expensive. And the guy that manages that location, shout out to that guy, because that guy is super cool. And I actually would love to work with him. But that motel is in LA. It's actually in it's called the Pink Motel, and it's in just north of Glendale. And unfortunately for our shoot, we wanted a very remote location where there wasn't going to be a lot of traffic noise, and it felt like the lead character was going off into the middle of nowhere and being isolated. And so that motel was the guy to work with was cool. The motel was awesome, but it was just like not quite right for this particular setting. And so we chose to go with the Four Aces movie set, which is out in Palmdale, California. Awesome location, as you can see. The neon is all there. This whole site works off of generators. It doesn't actually have electricity running to it. So
it's that remote, basically.
It's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah.
So assuming you had all this kind of mapped out prior to actually going, like as far as the location set,
Yep.
And everything. And
yeah, we had it all mapped up so that we understood what was going on. That's like via conversations with the site rep for this location, who's also the owner. He also has a bunch of cars that he rents out, like movie cars. So like this station wagon you're seeing here is something that they actually rent out to us as well.
Oh, cool. So for the real quick, Jay. So for this car in particular, so you said this was set in the 70s. So were you able to tell the guy, hey, I need like a 75, yada yada yada, or did it just so happen that it was?
Well, I'm so glad you asked this question, because this was one of the most stressful things that happened to us. So my dad and my uncle were actually involved in the classic car market. They owned a business where they actually knew a bunch of car guys. And so I asked my dad if he knew anybody that could like get us a car. Then I asked another friend of mine who I used to go to church with, because he works for a car, like a giant car. They do a big conference every year. It's one of the biggest car conferences in the world, probably. And I'm like, do you know anybody that has these like classic cars that I could get in touch with? Because these things are really expensive. And when you're trying to like lower your budget, keep your budget low, it's really hard to find good cars. So he connected me with somebody, with a guy. Shout out to Mike. Mike was my rep for getting me cars, and he got 2 cars that were perfect. They were perfect cars, like, because it called for there being a luxury car from the 1970s, and then there being a station wagon that was not that cool from the 1960s or 70s. And he had 2 cars lined up. And then one of the cars told him, like, backed out of it like the week beforehand. And I was like, okay, no problem. That's a bummer. But like, I can still get this station wagon that they can rent out to me at the location. So I go, that's no big deal, but I'd love to have the other car because the other car is amazing. Well, the day of the shoot, like literally we shoot on a Monday. We start shooting at 1:30 in the afternoon because we're trying to shoot a lot of night stuff. We're shooting at 1:30 in the afternoon, and I get a call from him at like 10:30, and he's like, the car that we're supposed to have to the set today will not move. Like it was on hydraulic bags, and the bags had been deflated, and it was literally the car was sitting on its wheels, so you couldn't even push it. Like it was just sitting on top of the wheels. And he's like, there's no way I can get you this car today. And so I just called up the site rep for this location, and I was like, hey, I need to rent another car from you. It costs us a bunch more money, of course, because now, fortunately, that guy was cool about it. And he was like, yeah, we can get you a car, no problem. So we had to get 2 cars from the location as well. And I was actually hoping I could get 2 cars that were, just rented to us or we could borrow for the shoot. So that didn't work out, but that was like the only emergency thing that happened. Like that was the only thing that was.
Well, if that was like the worst thing that could have happened, then you kind of had a smooth. When I first saw this photo and I saw the car, I thought in my head initially, I thought, oh man, Jay got Chevy Chase to make a cameo.
Yeah, there's no Chevy Chase cameos, unfortunately.
but I now a question, because you had mentioned about like you said that the whole short is about 18-20 minutes.
Yeah.
Roughly. Okay, so this is like a two-parter kind of question. So
Okay.
how long did it take you to shoot all the footage that you actually needed? Like days, like how many days, and then how many hours within that day? And the second part of the question is, does the length of time of shooting depend on how much footage you get right off the bat, or does it go just by your preference that you want to kind of do how many takes to kind of finagle yourself to say, okay, I kind of like take 2 more than take 4, so to speak?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, so I have to give a shout out to 2 of my collaborators on this project. The first person I call when I have a project to do is a friend of mine named Lucas Colombo. He's a DP. He's super talented. He is, if people don't know his name, like later on in his life, I'll be really surprised because he's that talented. And so I send him the script, and he doesn't need to work on films because he owns and operates Condor Blue. And Condor Blue is a camera and accessories company. They sell cameras and they sell accessories. And this is important to like some of the answer that I have here. So I call him up and I go, hey, do you want to shoot this? And then basically everybody says, well, send me the script. Because like your movie will live and die based on if people like your script, or they don't like your script. And I had a lot of confidence in our script because I'd entered it in contests, and it had done pretty well in contests. And so I was like, I feel pretty confident in this script, and I think people will resonate with it. So I sent it to him. He loves the script. He's in. Then he goes, if you want to work on this with somebody, we should work with Josh Long. So shout out to Josh Long. Josh Long was our AD, our assistant director. And Lucas and Josh are much more accustomed to how many scenes can we get done in a day? How many days does that need to be? All of that kind of thing. I don't have any experience with that whatsoever, right? I mean, I have a little bit now because I've done it. And quite frankly, I would have, if I, do we need an extra day of filming? No, because days of filming are really expensive. But I will say that we were going through the process pretty quickly every single day. Like we didn't waste a lot of time. We were just like shooting you shoot for, the actors aren't there for 12 hours, but you are setting up and shooting for 12 hours, setting up and shooting, right? Like, and so for the AD, for the director, for the DP, and for a lot of the crew, you're there for the full 12 hours, which is pretty crazy. So we had 4 12-hour days. We shot on Monday from 1 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. to 1:30 a.m. We shot on Tuesday from 2:30 p.m. to 2:30 a.m. And then we shot on Wednesday from 4 p.m. to about 3:30 in the morning. And then we had a day off, and then we shot at a separate studio. So if you scroll, I guess down a little bit, OG, this photo, that's the blackout set. So that's at a completely different location in Azusa, California. Shout out to Blackstone Entertainment. They have a blackout studio. So that was where we shot some of these other scenes. And that was done on Friday. So we had a day off on Thursday and then back to work on Friday.
I have a question, and this is probably a simple question, but I always wonder this with these blackout sets, because it's such a deep black.
Yeah.
Like if I painted my wall black and I stood in front of it, you would know it was painted black. What is it? Is it like a curtain, or how does it get so perfectly blacked out?
Oh, I should have sent you a photo of the bigger stage. I have one other photo that I could have shared with you, but essentially, imagine a room that is 3-sided.
Okay.
And it's painted. The kind of paint they use is a paint that absorbs light. Right now, if you're in the room, it doesn't look this dark. Like it doesn't look as dark as it looks like here. But when you only add one light source to the room, which is there's a light above us right now in this photo, and that's the light we were using for filming. What it does is it makes everything behind you seem just super crazy dark, like pitch black dark. And so that's how you get that effect, basically.
And it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. Like, you would never know that's a wall or anything. It's just that perfect deep blackness, you know?
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
Now I'm assuming in this photo right here, the guy and the woman on the left, those are the actors.
Correct. Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then this is Lucas Colombo, our director of photography. And
Nice.
then there's
And then who's the guy on the right?
Yeah. Some hack. I don't know who he is. Get him out of there.
So the guy in the far left, the actor. If we can, I don't want to. I mean,
Yeah.
what's that gentleman's name?
His name is Ben Holtzmuller.
So we got Ben Holtzmar, and then the lady is
Colleen Trussler.
Okay, and these are the stars of the film, right?
Correct. So this film is all about, like I mentioned, the investigative journalist character. Colleen is playing the investigative journalist character, and that was okay. So when you set out to cast your film, it is a very fascinating process because there's all these talented people and they're all auditioning for you, right? But there's a few things that we knew. Like one of the things that we were really big on, and I'm really big on this, like kind of all the time, but I always want to test and learn from things. And so when we did like the table read just here in the studio behind me, we had cast one of our local actors for that role. Didn't fit the age or anything like that. Like we weren't intending to cast from that perspective, but we wanted to just feel it out. Like, how does this work? And one of the things that we knew going in was you have to like Lee Larson. You have to like her because the whole film is you feeling like you associate yourself with her. She is our lens into this experience. And if you don't like her, then you're like, I don't care what happens to this lady. It doesn't matter to me. But if you like her, yeah, the whole thing falls apart. The stakes are gone, right? You're just like, the stakes are gone. And so
that's actually really quick. That's actually a really good point. Just even with big time Hollywood blockbuster movies, like you even take like a villain, for instance, a person that is portraying a villain, in a sense, you have to really like that character as much as the audience can't stand that villain's guts, but you have to become that person. So you have to find qualities in that villain to say, you know what, I have to get myself to a place that whatever I'm doing, it could be the most meanest, nastiest thing, but I enjoy doing it.
Absolutely. And the actors even more so. Like every single actor came up with an additional backstory, because one of the things that happens with collaborating with people, and film is one of the most collaborative experiences. Like I think it's actually kind of interesting that we tend to highlight actors and directors but we don't tend to highlight like the grips and the DPs. And I mean, like when you understand the collaboration that takes place and everyone has to do their job for it to be good, it's kind of ridiculous. So one of the things that I love about doing film is that I really enjoy working with other creative people. And so there was so many moments where, you know, I would, even before the filming started, I was talking to I cast a friend of mine, Phil Shabazz. Shout out to Phil Shabazz. I cast him as the villain in this, and he goes, hey, do you have a backstory for this villain? And I go, well, let me tell you what in my head works. It's like a 3-sentence description of what the background is for this guy. And he goes, cool, do you mind if I write a backstory for it? And I go, please do. I'd love to see a backstory for it. Like, that'd be great. And he wrote even more detail than I had so that he could learn how to embody the character and what his motivations were based on his backstory. And he gives me the backstory. I'm like, this is brilliant, dude. Like, run with that. That's a brilliant backstory. I love it. Nice. So, and Kirk Boville, another friend of mine who was cast in this as well, he did the same thing. He's like, I wrote a backstory and I know what this guy is going to do as soon as he leaves this last scene. I know exactly where he's going and I know exactly what he's going to do. And
that helps with the actor, and it helps with the talent to really become those characters. Because when they write their own backstory, it's what's the word for it? It's kind of like this passionate thing that came from the heart. You know what I'm saying? Yep, so absolutely. It's easier to connect to it. Go ahead, George. I think,
and yeah, that's commitment right there, and that really shows that they're invested in these
Yeah.
characters, because essentially they have to, as I said before, they have to become them. And actually, when you had mentioned that, it shows how much of a story geek I am, that like anytime that I watch a film, I always, even though I don't go through every single person, but I find it so fascinating that when you watch like the end credits of a film, and you just see all the people that are just involved with said film, and it's like, and a lot of them go under the radar. You know, a lot
Yeah.
of people don't even know what a grip is, or like what, you know, what's, you know, so and so, and it's like, but to think you needed every single one of those people
Yeah.
to make that movie happen. And I just find that extra, and a lot of people don't even focus on that. They just see it as a
Yeah.
bunch of words at the end of a movie.
Oh, it's so true.
And I feel like every single person should, you know, be, you know, given the spotlight, so to speak, because a lot of people, you know, they just focus on the actors, and it's like, well, you know, who has to get up at 2 a.m. in the morning to make those actors look good? You have, you know, the makeup
Right.
and,
Yeah.
you know, prosthetics department, you know, depending on what the movie is and what have you. So I mean, there's a lot of people that goes into making a movie. But my other question for you, Jay, is for oh shit, no, I lost it.
Well, while you think about that
Yeah,
question,
yeah.
let me point out that behind us was also a green screen studio that we did use for one scene as well. There's a scene that's not a full scene because it takes place on a TV, but it's a old TV interview between Lee Larson and an anchor woman, and we actually filmed that on that green screen set in the back, so we can just put a, you know, like this would be like a minor VFX thing, but it'd be like just a curtain backdrop, right? So it just looks like they're in a room on a studio set. But
And whoever
yeah.
did the costuming, I got to say, Jay, it hit the nail on the head. Like you said, like a, you know, 70s era.
Yeah.
Perfect hairstyles and the leather jacket and everything, you know, the kind of the browns and the dark oranges. It's very, very 70s. Well done.
Let me get Mariah's last name so I can give her credit, because she was an absolute joy to work with too. One of the things that when you especially when you write Mariah Harrison,
Cool.
fantastic job, Mariah, you're the best. Whenever you work with people who you've never met before and you're only going to work really, really hard for 4 days, you never know who you're going to get. You know what I mean? Like, you just never know who's going to show up. You never know how good they're going to be. You don't know if they're going to have the same vision that you had. But the one thing that I thought worked incredibly well, and I really meant a lot to me as a writer for this to be the case, is that everybody who read the script almost instantly understood what the story was. And then when they brought things to the table and were like, what about this? I was like, oh my gosh, like, you're not like, it's not like, you know, if you're aiming at a target and somebody's like all of a sudden aiming at a totally different target because they don't understand. There's only one time that happened to me. And we were able to very quickly clarify that, like, that was way off base. It wasn't with Mariah, but everybody else was so close to the target that I was just like, yeah, that's amazing. Like, just maybe like just tweak this little tiny thing, or like just do this other thing instead. Like, they were so in tune with what was going on that they just nailed it across the board. And that was really, really rewarding. As a writer, that's what you hope for, right? Like, you can't hope for more than people get it.
And I actually remember my question now. So from this process, when you went from thought process to paper and then paper to lens, so to speak, was there anything that ended up changing from your initial idea? Like, as time went on, did you have like an original concept in your mind, but then as time went on, to even when you were on the film set, you know, it's like, okay, that was my original idea, but I'm going to kind of scrap it and kind of change it this way. And like, was there like any kind of like like impromptu type of decisions where it's like, okay, you know what, we're in this moment, and I think now that I'm actually visually looking at it, I think it would look better this way than what I initially intended?
Yeah, there were several of those moments. And again, those were able to happen because everyone was laser focused on what we were trying to accomplish, which was amazing. So, so the characters who had more complex roles, I spoke with all of them prior to shooting. We had a conversation about what the role was, how the role should act. They all got it. They all were amazing. There were a couple people though who I didn't know, and I had never interacted with them before. Literally cast them because the casting director made a call out to her network of people. Shout out to our casting director, Cara Sullivan. Cara was amazing because she's like, it was like professionally casting a movie. I mean, I had all these lists and lists of people that I was watching all of their auditions, going like, who do we choose for these roles? Where I didn't have a connection and needed to find one. So there's one role in this film, and I don't know if you scroll down. I don't know if I have a picture of it, OG. I might not have sent you one. I'll let you know if I see it. But there's one role where there's a stoner kid who is okay. Those are the shots. Perfect.
Yeah.
There's a stoner kid who's managing the motel. So he's like late teens, total stoner, like doesn't give a shit about anything, like that kind of character, right?
Yeah.
And in the script, like he's just laughing at these cartoons. He's watching cartoons. He's just laughing at the cartoons. He's barely paying attention when someone comes to check in. And we went through this big casting process. And I really wanted to cast one of my friends. Shout out to Alexander. I really wanted to cast Alexander because I had worked with him already. But logistically, that got to be really challenging. And so we found an audition from this kid named Spencer Harrison Levin. And shout out to Spencer. I don't know if he'll watch this or not, but he and in fact, I asked some other people for their opinions related to who I should call back for this role after I'd seen the auditions, and several people were like, "You need to call back Spencer." And like I didn't quite see it at the time in the audition, but this is why I like collaborating with other people because I want the best possible product, and so I'm asking other people. So he did a callback. We got him actually in on a Zoom. We cast on Zoom, so we did because I'm in Northern Colorado, he's in Southern California. All these other people are in Southern California. And in the Zoom audition, he just blew it out of the water. And this kid I call him kid because he's younger than me, but he's hilarious, like hilarious. There's a scene where he thinks that Lee Larson is knocking on the front door of the motel, and he walks out to check to see who it is. And this is completely improv, and he was trying different lines, but this is one of my favorites, and I hope it ends up in the final film. He goes, because he's annoyed that he has to deal with he thinks he's dealing with this lady who's being obnoxious, right? And he's interrupting his cartoons. And he goes, "Look, lady, I can turn the mattress over, but I'm telling you, you're not going to like the other side any better."
Now, he came up with that?
He came up with that because so again, like he could see what we were attempting to do with the character. And like so you asked George, like, was there anything that was improv? Was there anything? I had not written that character to be as funny as he was. I go like this.
It just kind of came out that way.
Yeah, and so and that's why we cast him, because when he did the role, I was like, oh my gosh, like in my head, this role wasn't that funny, but it's better that it's funnier. Like it's a better experience for the audience if it's funnier. So yeah, we have to put him in the role. Like he's got to be in that role. And he would just do things like there's a shot of him, the shot right before when someone knocks on the door, the shot is of him watching cartoons, and he's got this like joint in one side of his mouth, and as he has the joint in his mouth, he's shoving potato chips in, and like they're getting all over. It is so funny. Like Colleen, our lead actress, she had to interact with him a lot, and she said, I'm having to bite my lip not to laugh in the scenes because he's that funny.
Wow.
So that was like not something that we had planned. Like the role is meant to be funny, but it's meant to be funny in like the context of like, oh, it's really funny to laugh at a stoner who doesn't care about his job. It's not supposed to be laughed at like this is a comedic genius at work. You know what I mean? But like Spencer was bringing that to the table in a way that was like, this is amazing. Like
and he's going places, I think. I mean, he's definitely going places because it's like, for example, you take a character like Han Solo, right?
Yeah.
Like that character changes dramatically without Harrison Ford.
Oh, totally.
I mean, you know what I'm saying? And so what Harrison brought to that character really made the character, right? Yep. So this kid is like, he's going into it and he's bringing his own flavor, his own fingerprint to it. And just, that's amazing, dude. That is absolutely amazing. And stuff that you predict, because you would have never known, you know, predict the kid's personality and what he would have improv, and it all works out. Go ahead, George.
No, I was just going to say really quick, he and I would probably get off immensely because, I mean, knowing me, like, who does improv? You know, really?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
like,
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Like-
you probably would, George. You guys would crack
Yeah.
each other out. Like, yeah.
And how many actors like altogether did you have as far as
Eight.
as part of
Eight. There were eight.
Eight
performers.
altogether.
Yep.
Eight
yep.
altogether.
Eight altogether. Yep. Yep.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
this one.
wild.
Yeah.
So there are eight actors altogether. Now you film everything, right? And
Yep.
because you said you were hoping that makes it into the film. So now when it goes to like an editor, I assume, and then that person makes the call as to what is in and what is out.
Yeah. So in pre-production is when you have pre-production. We already were bringing a script, right? Because my co-writer and I are serving as writer and producer, and then then I was also a director, right? So so we bring the script. So you'd call like the script screenwriting is generally speaking probably included in pre-production, but we'd already had a script. So pre-production started as soon as Lucas Colombo said, I want to work with you guys. And then we said, now pre-production starts. Now, how do we bring in other people into this process? How do we make sure we do all this stuff? That's all the pre-work of finding a location, finding actors, all that kind of stuff. Production then is you show up to the set and those are the days you're shooting. And then once you're done and you wrap on the last day, then you immediately go into post-production, right? And so post-production is going to include things like the final edit that's done. We'll still have final say over the edit. So if there's things that, like, for example, if I really want that line in there and for some reason we chose a scene that didn't have that line, I'd be like, can we go back and choose that scene?
So
But
is that basically when you have like a DVD or a Blu-ray and it says the title of the movie and it says director's cut? Is that what that is, or is that something completely different?
That's something a little bit different. See, here's another thing. I don't think people understand how much control editors have over the film too. I mean, we shot it because I had a pretty clear vision in my head about like what I wanted to shoot and how I wanted to shoot it. So I think that most of what we shot will end up in the film and there won't be a lot of deviation from that. But let's just say, for example, that there was some sound issues. And the one shot that I really liked had a sound issue in it, and we couldn't deal with that sound issue, so we had to use a different shot. Like, some of those things happen, right? But I mean, like, editors have like quite a bit of control over what goes in the film. In fact, I've heard people say that Jaws was essentially saved in the edit. Like, it's this amazing movie that everyone loves today, but like Steven Spielberg was having anxiety attacks because he's like, this is a disaster shoot, and they basically, the editor put it together in such a way that it's like, this is brilliant.
His editor, I believe, Thelma Shoemaker. Phenomenal editor. I mean, she won multiple Academy Awards, and she was basically Steven Spielberg's go-to gal, like, for a lot of his films because of Jaws. Because you're right, she ended up kind of saving that film. But it also kind of went the opposite route for George Lucas when it came time for American Graffiti, because there was a lot of issues that he had where, like, there was so much that was cut that he wanted to have more control over.
Yeah. So let's just say, to your question about director's cut, let's just say that like we did a cut and that in this instance, I am the director and the producer. So like, there's no cut that I can't have, right? Like, I can just say like, I don't like your cut. Like, let's do a different cut. And I don't know exactly who's going to be editing it yet. I know that Condor Blue is editing it in general, and I'm pretty sure Moai Films, which is Lucas's company, and I know Lucas is going to have his hands on it, and he's a perfectionist, so it'll come out awesome. That's why.
But if you're just a director, that just gets hired by either a production company or a studio, then it's basically you're just there to direct.
Yep.
And then that's it. So actually, is that in a way kind of how we perceive cinema? Like, when we go and see a movie, and it can actually look horrible, and it's like, and then when they tie a director's name to it and we say, oh my gosh, that director did absolutely horrible, well, technically it may not have been the director's issue. It could have been another kind of department that may have screwed up the film. That's interesting.
Well, for example, I'll give you a perfect example, and this is a very famous one. David Ayer's the first Suicide Squad, so not the Suicide Squad, but just Suicide Squad. His film, he said that he basically directed 4 or 5 different films because the studio, who are the producers, who get the final say on whatever, because they're the ones with all the money, So in our case, it just so happens that we're producers because we are bringing a lot of money to the table. Lucas is also a producer because he's bringing money to the table. But we're not answering to a studio, right? Like, so when I'm the director, I'm also the producer. Whatever I say goes, basically.
That's good.
But if you get hired on, David Ayer got hired on to do Suicide Squad. The studio kept saying, "Nah, we don't like that part of it. We don't like that part of it. We don't like that part of it. Do this, do that. We got to include Batman. We got to do this. We got to do that." So David Ayers is on record as basically saying, like, that's not the film that I would have released at all. And it's not even close to being the film I would have released. And yet we say Suicide Squad wasn't really that great, and then you kind of think, well, who's to blame for that, right? It's probably not David Ayer, to be honest with you. It's probably somebody else.
That's interesting.
But yeah,
that's interesting.
Completely different process for those. For studio films, it's a lot. It's a lot is on the table at that point because you don't have as much control as you might think.
Now, do you have? I know this is only a short film, but do you have any kind of score or like?
There will be a score. Yep, there will be a score that's also done in post production. So I have not heard it yet. Don't know how it will sound, but Lucas knows a guy who does scores, and they're going to score it for us. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome. So what are we looking at in terms of release date windows? Do we have anything like that yet, or do we know approximately?
Well, what I'm saying right now is early 2024. So one of the really unique things that happened on this particular project, which was really cool, is that in order to get some additional budget from sponsors and things like that. Again, Lucas Colombo owns Condor Blue, which sells cameras and which sells camera accessories. And one of the things that he has become awesome at, he usually only does this with one other sponsor, but this time around he did it with 4 sponsors. And so he had lens companies and stuff sponsor the film. So you'll get to see who those companies were and like why they sponsored it and all that kind of stuff. It'll be like in the credits and things like that. But because of that, we were constantly shooting behind the scenes footage. So we had Mondo, who has over 500,000 YouTube followers. He does a bunch of like how to shoot video and what kind of camera reviews and stuff like that. You can check his channel out. Really cool guy. He was on set filming all the time behind the scenes content. We had Kofi was on set. He's also a film influencer. I don't remember how many followers he has. One of our he was helping with lighting half the time and just doing it just because he was having fun. We had two other YouTubers. What is Janae's last name? I don't remember Janae's last name. I'm sorry, Janae. She was a camera operator for 2 days, but we had a different camera operator the first 2 days. His name was Ryan Kao, Kao. He has over 200,000 YouTube followers. So they were doing all this. They were helping us do all of the stuff. And so they also have a bunch of behind the scenes content. And so they want to release all of that content. We want them to release all of that content, but not until the film's finished. So we're trying to get the film out on YouTube as quickly as possible so everybody can then promote it.
Awesome.
And get views from it.
And I'm not sure. Can you say the name of the title of the film or?
Yeah. The title of the film is No Vacancy.
No Vacancy.
No Vacancy.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome.
And our title shot, if you go to the motel shot real quick.
Yeah.
If you go to the motel shot, that one right there. The one, either one works. Yeah, that one or the other one. Maybe go to the other one because it's a little closer up.
Keep going, OG. I'm going to need a Dramamine.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Our title shot, which is really cool, is that our stoner Ryan, he walks into the office and we follow him into the office and then we track right off to the side and go to that no vacancy sign in the window as he lights it up and it's like no vacancy.
That's great.
That's
great.
So one of the things that I didn't know is I was not clear because I have a background in writing, right? And I've written quite a few films, but like I've written 3 short films that have been produced. One of those I did not write. I wrote 2 short films, was a producer on another film that I didn't write. I was a producer on the other 2 films as well. And one of the things I did not know was like, what do I have to do when I show up on set as a director? Like, what is my responsibility? And like, when does it cross over into someone else's responsibility? And I even looked up, like afterwards, I looked up what the roles were, and I watched a bunch of different YouTube channels about talking about what the roles were between a DP and a director, and between an assistant director and a director. And we stuck to those roles. I didn't know that we were doing that, but we really stuck to those roles in this process. And what that allowed me to do is really concentrate on the shots that I wanted. So every single morning I would go through and create a shot list. And I had already had a shot list before, but we were using this piece of software, which I won't name because they didn't sponsor us or anything, but this piece of software, it kept reordering all my shots and putting them in the wrong scenes and stuff like that. So every single morning I would wake up, I would get breakfast, and I would go to my shot list and make sure that it was really clean and understandable for that whole day, right? So this is the shot that I want. This is when I want this shot. This is how I want the camera to move. This is what I want to see. This is what's important in the scene. And then I would take that shot list, and of course, we didn't have printers, so I had to use my little phone. And I did like go to my phone every single time and be like, hey, these are the shots for this particular scene. And then I would meet with Lucas, and I'd meet with Josh, and I would go, here's what I'm thinking of for this scene. You know, do we have any problems shooting it this way? And then usually Lucas would go like, why don't you show me? Why don't you block it out a little bit? So then I do the blocking, and I'd be like, she walks in here, she goes here, she does this, she does that. This other character does this and does that, and this other thing. And then I would work. Then so once he understood what I was trying to get, he would be like, cool, we can do that. And he would just go set everything. He'd get the lighting crew going. He'd get all the camera crew set up. He'd get the right lenses put on. And while he was doing that, I would go work with the actors. And I'd go, so here's what this scene is going to look like. Camera's going to be over here. We're going to be trying to get this particular aspect of it. The emotions you're feeling are kind of like these, and we'd have a discussion about it. And then as soon as they were ready with the lighting, as soon as the cameras were up, like, you know, I get behind Studio Village, which is where we see our screens and we can see what they're filming. And then action, here we go, boom. And then they'd shoot the shot, and then we'd come back and cut it again. So it was really cool.
That's interesting, because I'm glad you mentioned that, because I always wondered like where the director's role ended and where, you know, the producers, you know, began, and it's all like intertwined. It's like one big jigsaw puzzle, you know. So I'm glad you were. It brings it a different perspective, like of understanding like each person's. So no one's actually stepping on each other's toes, which I'm for sure that it happens a lot, even in like big Hollywood movies. Now, another quick question I have for you is, I don't know if you would know this, because I know obviously you didn't do this, but like for directors that are also actors and they're actually acting in the film, and there's scenes. So do you know like how that goes about, like how a director can direct a scene but also be in it at the same time, sort of like
Ben Affleck,
or Clint Eastwood, or even Quentin Tarantino with Pulp Fiction. You know, he was in, you know, some scenes like with Samuel L. Jackson, John Travolta, and Harvey Keitel. So it's like, how do you know how one goes about doing that? Because as you said, when you were just filming, you were in, you know, the back, you know, kind of doing your directing, you know, obviously you're the director. And so like so do you know like how that usually goes about?
Since I haven't done it myself, I won't speak as an expert, but I can tell you how I think it's probably done based on my experience, right? In my opinion, in this kind of setting where you have a DP that you trust and you think is amazing, which I did, I knew he was going to handle all of the shots with perfection, so that when I explained what the shot was and why I needed certain elements in the shot, I had I should note this too. I had a very visual script. One of the reasons I cast Colleen was that in a lot of her other films that she has done, her face tells a story. And I don't have a lot of long monologues and stuff where they're like getting to do that kind of thing. I have a lot of like very quiet scenes where we're doing close-ups. So you have to see her emotion and go, I know what she's experiencing based just solely on looking at her face. And so, so in my opinion, what a director is doing at this stage is you've interpreted the script. You've started to think about the script visually, which I do as a writer, but like a director has to then take that and go like, okay, specifically when someone says they walk into the room, Are we going to see them opening the door? Are we going to do a close up on their hands? Are we going to do a far away shot and have them going in? Like, do we go right over their shoulder and do a tracking shot where we follow them in? Like, as a director, you have to think like, okay, when the script says they enter this place, then what do I do with that? Like,
and that's amazing, Jay, because as a layman, like, we don't consider that, right? Like, there's so much thought and preparation for something that you would think would be, oh, they just walk in, but you're right. You have to set up. How's the shot going to be set up? Is it going to be from the ground up? Is it going to be from the top down? Are we going to see them come through the door? Are we only going to hear them come through the door? It's crazy how much goes into even just a little thing like that.
Oh yeah, it's insane. And so then what happens is then as a director, I have to communicate to the DP. I have to say, also, by the way, who's called director of photographer because he's directing the photography, right? So like, I'm directing like the story and he's directing the photography. And so I talk to the DP and I say to the DP, here's the shots I would like. Here's why I want these shots. Here are the most important things in this shot. Like if we're going to rack focus means you take let's just say you have a character in the background and you have something in the foreground and you want to change the focus from focusing on the character to focusing on the thing. Like you'll do a rack focus mid scene. Like if you want to do a rack focus, like why did you do that? Like there has to be a reason for it, right? Like, so for example, maybe it's like in our script, there's a lot of, one of the things that Lee Larson has is a bowling ball bag, and that bowling ball bag has something in it that's very important to her. And so there's a lot of focus on that bowling ball bag, and she's always kind of dealing with that bowling ball bag and looking at it. And so I have to, everybody involved has to know that thing is really important. The actors have to know it because they have to know like, oh, every time I look at that, I get a little bit of anxiety. The DP has to know it because he's got to light the scene. So if we show the bowling ball bag, it makes sense to see it in that context, and then also film it in that context and know when to rack focus too. So, so there's a lot that goes into the director basically is saying, I'm going to do all I can to have everyone understand the script. And of course, I'm going to have to understand the script better than anybody else. Right. In fact, I think I could direct a project where I didn't write it, but there's a lot more work you have to do as a director getting into that story and really breaking it down and understanding it, because you're taking it from a writer. Now it's becoming yours. And so you really have to understand it. For example, in you guys will see this when we do the movie, but I have a lot of close-ups and I have a lot of I don't have a lot of two shots. Two shots means that there's two characters in the scene. You can both see them at the same time. I don't have a lot of two shots because I want the audience to feel like Lee Larson is isolated and she's at this remote motel. She doesn't have any friends around. She's all by herself. And so lots of times when you see her, you see she's just there and there's no one else around her. Even if she's talking to somebody, we only show her and then we cut to the other person. We don't do an over the shoulder or anything like that, right?
Oh, interesting.
So
it's that mind, like psychology of it all.
Correct. You got to have all that psychology of it all as to what visuals am I showing and why am I showing those visuals? And you've got to have all of those things in your head that you then interpret onto a shot list. So to answer your question, George, about like how does a director direct people when he or she is also in the film? I think basically it is, as long as you know this is where the camera is moving, you can say as soon as I say action, or if I have my AD say action instead, or even my DP say action instead, as soon as that happens, I can switch over to actor mode and turn into that character and not have to worry about anything else. And then they can have separation between those two roles, I think, in that kind of setting. Now, the thing is that they're going to only interpret the scene as it's happening in front of them. So they're going to have to go back and play it back to see what happened in the scene, or they're going to have to go, that felt really good. What did it look like, DP? And the DP says, looked great. And they go, great, we'll move on, you know?
Yeah. Oh, that's
where
wild.
it would get tricky. Yeah.
That's absolutely wild.
That's something to kind of like have like a lot of people, like even as a director, you have to have faith and trust in these people to call the right shots, that if you were actually off camera, well, no, let me rephrase that. Off behind the camera, but in front of the camera, then, you know, you have to put your whole faith and trust in the decision making, you know, it's basically having a very strong kinetic work relationship that you know, it's like a bodyguard, so to speak. So like when you hire a bodyguard, it's like their sole purpose is to, if anything happens, God forbid, they're willing to take a bullet for this person. So it's like you have to have that kind of chemistry to say, you know what, I'm putting my career, my life towards this person to be behind the camera when I should be, but I'm in front of the camera. So it's like that's amazing.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
huge. It's
That's
huge.
wild. Well, it sounds, Jay, it sounds like you lucked out. If you, because you were saying the only real issue you had was a car thing. I mean, for a production, that is, you absolutely lucked out with this, man. And then you had a great team, and they brought a lot to the table. So I'm really looking forward to it. I cannot wait. We will definitely. I want to do another video. I want to do another video about No Vacancy, and we'll bring you back, and we'll talk more about. We talked about it via text. I don't want to put it out there yet.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
No,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we can put it. We can. I'll tease it out a little bit. OG and I will be inviting other people who were involved in the production onto the show, and we'll have them talk about their experience as well. And we won't say who, but some other people.
Right, exactly. But Jay, thank you so much. Very, very fascinating stuff. We are very, very excited to check this out. And we will definitely be supporting this film when it does get released. And it was just a great time having you on and talking about it and learning a lot. My favorite thing, it's funny, my favorite thing about Universal Studios when I go to Universal Studios is the tram tour, and it's for this reason. It's that kind of learning, the education of like the behind the scenes stuff. I absolutely love it.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Behind the scenes, it's funny because I don't think. There's a lot of YouTube commentary about stuff that people don't actually know what they're talking about. And I think that can be good, but it also showcases that there is not an understanding of like how difficult it is to do a small, like I wouldn't call this a small creative project, because we had it was a much bigger project than most small films, like most short films. But there's so much that goes into it. There's so much that you're doing that's involved. Like, and if you realized, like, for example, I had to swap a car that was like the perfect car I would have wanted for a car that I'm like, this actually had to change the script. When we had to swap cars, I had to change the script because the script no longer matched, because I had referenced it being a luxury car. And when the character said that line, I'm like, it's not a luxury car anymore. It's an American muscle car. And that actually, to your point, George, earlier, your question, we got an end credit scene because I woke up in the middle of the night while we're filming, and I go, "Oh, I have an idea for an end credit scene," because I had to change that line of dialogue. So then I have an end credit scene that takes place in that car because I was like, "We changed the car. I have an idea for like bringing that up again in the context of the movie, but it's just kind of a joke. So we should just put that as an end credit scene, and so we'll have an end credit scene related to that too."
Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
that's
lots of fun stuff.
Nice.
Awesome.
And before OG closes us out, I have one last final question for you, Jay. It's sort of kind of like a question to kind of cap it all up. Perfect. So, when am I going to get my Academy Awards invite?
Yeah, I cannot guarantee any Academy Awards. I won't guarantee any of those. But of course, I would love to have you guys at one of the premieres we do. I think we're going to probably do at least one premiere, if not multiple premieres across the country, saying the West Coast premiere, East Coast premiere, those kind of things. So
awesome.
Well, hey, even if it's just one premiere, however you give us the date, I'll definitely be there.
Awesome.
To support you. And as I said, because I've even heard you talking about this, like while you were still in the process of doing the table reads and everything. So I'm so glad that you brought us along the journey, from different aspects of it. So of course we definitely have to be there to support you in your moment of triumph with this short film.
Yeah, and stay tuned, everybody watching. Stay tuned, because we will do another video about this, but it's going to come soon. So make sure that you're hanging out. You look at the descriptions of all these videos so that you can find No Vacancy when it does come out. It'll be on my channel, but it'll also be. We're going to draw a lot of attention to the Condor Blue channel, because the more eyes on it, the better, and that's a good channel to post it on. So yeah, I mean. Thank you guys for having me on. Thanks for letting me talk about it. I could talk about this for like days. My experience was so good that I have told people that it's not the highlight of my life. I love my wife. Getting married to her, it was amazing. I have lots of other highlights that are like interpersonal highlights, but this was for sure the highlight of my career. So
Wow.
Nice.
just amazing. So
And so
thank
for
you guys
anyone out there,
talking.
when this short film releases, you definitely got to check it out.
Yes.
You know, give it the love it deserves. And if you don't, as I said, I'm going to be very upset. And when an Italian gets very upset, it's not a pretty picture.
Exactly.
You don't want to have to deal with George. You don't want to have to deal with the Italiano.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
That's right. That's right.
But Jay, if you could remind everybody where they can find you on social media, sir.
Yeah, you can follow me at Jay Sherer over on Instagram or over on Twitter. I made my account on Instagram public because we were sharing content from being on set and stuff like that. So you can follow me over there now. And you can also follow me How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. I am going to do a video series. It's basically like I directed my first movie. Here's what I learned. So I'm going to do a whole video series for that over on How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. I don't know when that's going to get done because I've got lots of other things to do. So hopefully it'll get done sometime around the movie when the movie comes out. The movie will be on How Stories Work with Jay Sherer. It will also be on the Condor Blue YouTube channel. So check out all of those things in the future. And once again, I could not be more thankful to both of you guys for wanting to talk about this. It's really been a really cool process to get everybody involved and get everybody excited. So thank you both for taking the time.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a pleasure. And you can find more of Jay on this channel too. I was about to say How Stories Work.
That's what happened to me at the beginning. I like it just completely frustrated.
Story Geeks, where we
Geeks.
geek out about all kinds of stuff. Like we just recently did videos about like what makes a good Pixar movie. We broke down like, seasons of The Mandalorian, Ahsoka. So a lot of great stuff. So make sure you check out the playlist here on the channel, Story Geeks with Jay Sherer. So again, Jay, thank you so much for coming on, brother. The Italiano, if you can remind everybody where they can find you on social media, sir.
Absolutely. You can find me on X, formerly known as Twitter, at Disney George. You could also find me now on Instagram under the Disney Italiano. And of course, you'll find me on my home base at Orange Grove 55 with Citrus Corner with all that sweet, juicy, but sometimes sticky Disney news and info.
There you go. There you go. Flawless execution on that.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate
Flawless.
it. And I was just, it's funny, Jay, that when we were on with the Bad Thoughts podcast, that I tell them I'm like a non-script kind of guy. Like I just talk my mind, and then I end up doing my spiel, and Candy Camper just looks at me. He's like, for someone who goes non-scripted, that was a pretty good script. It's like
exactly. Exactly. Well, thank you all so much for watching. Comment down below with all your thoughts on No Vacancy, the process, everything we discussed today. If you have any questions for Jay in particular, post it in the comments below or on his Twitter or Instagram, which I will be linking also down below. Thank you all so much for watching. And as always, have a wonderful, wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.